impacts our lives every day in what we call weather volatility. Weather volatility is something that people have become more and more aware of all across the world. It's prolonged periods of high temperatures or drought or flooding, weather patterns that get stagnated and that stay in the same position for weeks or even months on end and lead to extraordinary weather conditions. The impact, of course, on agriculture is very severe, and what we've seen is that even small changes in climate can have a profound impact on agriculture. A difference of 10 or 15% in rainfall can be the difference between a very successful crop or a very poor crop. So it's vitally important that we monitor the climate and the impact of climate change on farms and on agriculture. And I want to point out that for many areas, climate change is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it can be a good thing. There are parts of the northern United States where farmers do not call they don't call it global warming. They call it climate improvement because their growing season is 10 days longer than it was just 30 years ago. So these are very important changes that have a profound impact on agriculture. There is a lot of new technology that can help drive changes in weather observations and other data and information that's available on farms that allows better measurements of the impact of climate change, but it can marry up with other improvements in agriculture that I'll talk about in just a minute. One of the things that people don't realize is that the existing meteorological observation network that has existed more or less unchanged since the end of World War II there's certainly global coverage, but that coverage isn't evenly distributed around the world. And it's certainly not a good measure of what impacts farms and agriculture. It's very much centered on cities where people live and on airports to support the global aviation network. So it's not ideally suited for monitoring what's actually happening on farms. At the same time, over the past 10 or 20 years, the same changes in technology that have taken place over the last 20 years that have revolutionized communications, computer capabilities, have also revolutionized the way in which weather observations can be taken and which they can be communicated. And what was formerly a very expensive process has become much less expensive, can be wirelessly collected with a far simpler infrastructure, and it allows a more dense network of observations to be made that can serve agriculture specifically. And of course, food production is going to be tied to having more precise information because that's what precision agriculture is all about. Precision agriculture is the collection of very precise and quantitative information. By quantitative, I mean hard numbers, rather than it was wetter than it was last year, or colder or warmer, very precise measurement of exactly what those changes are. Precision agriculture, I think many people have heard about tractors that have GPS systems on them. Those GPS systems produce a huge amount of data, and they allow a tractor and a farmer to know exactly what he planted, where he planted it, when he planted it, and then it can correlate that with the harvest and exactly how much was harvested, when, where, under what conditions, literally not just field by field, but almost row by row or plant by plant. Having precise weather information available on that same farm can allow us to assess the impact of weather on that production. And I think all of us know that weather is quite variable, especially quantities like rainfall and wind. We've all seen the difference that even just a few blocks can make between a heavy rainfall and a light rain or no rain at all. So being able to monitor those things, being able to take that information and use it can lead to greater efficiencies and ultimately to greater food production. So Project Climate Smart got its start actually in a project that DTN undertook in the United States and Canada. We partnered actually with Pioneer Seeds to just put out weather stations that farmers actually purchased. This wasn't a giveaway program. This was DTN and Pioneer putting together a program offering these relatively low-cost weather stations to provide hard information, deliver that information to the farmers in a set of agricultural decision support system applications that they could then take and use as hard information. We launched the program 3 years ago, and in 3 years we've put in over 5,000 stations in what is already a very dense network of meteorological observations. And those 5,000 stations have not come back, they've not been returned. The farmers find them to be of tremendous value. What we want to do is take this same idea and go global with it, because we think we've proven that the technology exists to make this highly successful. It starts with the local weather station. That's a natural picture of the weather station on the slide. It is completely wireless, first of all. It measures all the basic weather parameters: temperature, humidity, pressure, wind, rain. Has a solar radiation sensor on it, and it can even measure soil temperature and soil moisture. All of it done wirelessly. The samples are sent back over a standard cell phone network every 15 minutes. And the whole thing sits on a pole, and it can be installed in an hour or less. No power required, no other external communications. The data collection is done through the cloud. It's done via GPRS modem, standard cell phone communications, using the data channels on cell phones. The data itself is it's all digital data, so it's a relatively small volume of data, so it's quite easy to collect, quite economical to collect. All of that information gets brought back to a central facility at DTN where we monitor all of the information. We monitor the communications itself to all the weather stations, because cell phone signals do go up and down. The stations will spool information if they don't have direct communications, and then send it all once the communications are reestablished. So there's continuity of data. One of the most important things that we do is we apply quality control to this information. We assess it, we compare it to other conditions so that we're sure that the data that we're getting is of highest quality. And then we use that high quality observational information to actually produce a very high quality forecast. Very precise, accurate, because we have a good solid observation to initialize the forecast. And we update that forecast every hour as we get new information in from the weather station. So the information is continuously being updated, it's continuously being improved, and it produces a very accurate forecast, hour by hour, out for 15 days into the future. Specific actionable information that a farmer can use. And then the data is distributed, and it's also stored in the historical archive, because there are applications that need to use historical data, need to look back 1, 2, 3 months, or look back 1, 2, or 3 years to see what was available. All of that is managed centrally. It's not managed on the farm at all. The information is distributed back through the internet again, and distributed to various different applications, including, I talked about the agricultural decision support systems. I'll show some examples of those. It's also available via web services to other applications. And again, the bandwidth required is relatively low. Here's an example of an agricultural decision support system. That's a big name for products that many of you may be somewhat familiar with. Some of these actually show up on your phone. For a farmer in the field, they need that weather information available in real time. They want to be able to see exactly what conditions are now how strong is the wind, how much has it rained so far today, how much did it rain yesterday, how much did it rain on my field that might be 10 or 15 kilometers away that I can't get to, but that I can see the weather conditions on, rather than having to go over there and view it. All of that information is available in real time. The precision forecasts that I talked about are available here, and they can be viewed hour by hour, day by day, so planning and decisions can be made about what operations to undertake. A farmer will undertake operations like spraying his crops or applying fertilizer, but those decisions are very weather dependent. He can look at a map view of his fields and see conditions and rainfall on a spatial view. He can get alerts as to things that are happening in other parts of his farm. He has a calendar for making planning applications, and he can get all of this on a desktop computer, like the laptop that I'm sitting here right now, or on his phone. You know, a modern app on a phone. All of this same information is right there. So he doesn't have to be sitting at a desk. He can actually be out in the field and have access to this information. So this is the real power of that information. It's not just the information itself. It's the ability to make good decisions based on that information that really gives Climate Smart its power.